Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome back into another episode of Born on the Bayou Sports. Tim Costello, Scott Barzilla coming to you live and hot here Tuesday evening as we get ready to take a deep look at a lot of things going on in Houston. And for the first time, I think, in the show's history, we're going to talk pretty limited Astros, Scott.
It is the first time you said hot. Now, rumor has it that it got up to 95 up in your neck of the woods this last week.
It definitely, the heat was out. I don't know if it got to 95, but it was warm. It was definitely warm. And, unfortunately, we had the best weather ever this last weekend, and I didn't get to play any golf. My course was hosting a junior tournament. As a former junior golfer, I definitely support the kids getting out and playing. I just, Scott, I don't know if we played during the week. Like, we weren't allowed to take a prime Sunday tee time away from the members. So I don't want to be that guy, bitching, but, at the same time,
No, we were a Monday. We were a Monday only.
Yeah.
Maybe a Tuesday.
I mean, you volunteered for the HGA. Those tournaments were all Monday and Tuesdays. They were never Saturday and Sundays, or the courses wouldn't have let them do it.
No, never was. I may have played in one event at Bay Forest that was not an HGA event. That may have been on a weekend. That may have been it.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't... One of the things I've realized as I've moved up here and kind of seen how the junior golf scene is here, there's no... HGA really equivalent anywhere else in the world, man. I realized how fortunate we were to have something like the HGA, which is competitive, but it's not the Texas Junior Golf Tour. It's not the AJGA. It's a place where you can hone your skills in a competitive nature, and at the same time play some of the best golf courses in Houston for $25 every week.
No, and I think if I'm back when I was playing, the only city that had one that, if I recall correctly. Now, back in my day, I'm going to sound like the old man here, we joined for $20. Every tournament was $5. Now, could you imagine playing Walden on Lake Conroe?
Yeah.
TPC, $5.
Yeah.
Kingwood. I mean, it was, those were the days.
I mean, and I thought 25 was a steal, right? Because I think it was maybe $100 to join, maybe even $125. But it was worth it, right? Because our high school coaches wanted to see what we were doing over the summertime. Honestly, we had to play X amount of tournaments. If you were going to be on the high school team, you had to let the coach know what minimum 4 tournaments you'd be playing over the summertime. So it was either go play all over the country for AJGA, go play all over Texas for the Texas Junior Golf Tour, or play some great courses in Houston for $25 and sleep in your own bed every night.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't have, our coach was, Coach Williams, God rest his soul, was not quite as diligent about, having us play. Even during the year, there were some people that never even played during the year for him. So, those are, the wild, wild west, as they said.
Well, speaking of the wild, wild west, the Western Conference in the NBA has always been one of the toughest competition wise, top to bottom, right? And it starting out this season, it looked like Rafael Stone had, struck gold in his coaching hire. It looked like his free agent moves were just money, couldn't be any better. His draft picks of Sengun, Whitmore, everything looked to be flowing in the Rockets' direction. Well, here we are, say 3 months later, Scott, and we're talking Stone on the hot seat right now.
Yeah, so that would be my question. So I'm gonna let you put your Tillman Fertitta hat on. First of all, if I could ask you to be a little bit less money grubbing in your restaurants, that would be my first request of you, Tillman Fertitta.
I'm fine with the price. Just give better food, right? Either one has to come up or the other one has to come down.
Well, the joke we always said is that the silverware was a la carte. But I don't know if you've ever done Vic and Anthony's, but that was a very overrated experience, I'll say.
I met a fraternity brother there for a hockey game. The arrows were still there. And he goes, meet me here, we'll go to the game. And I'm going to a hockey game. I'm dressed for a hockey game. My fraternity brother told me to meet him here. And they wouldn't even let me in the restaurant.
Oh, well, they did the same thing to us, except they let us in, but they put us at a really bad table because we were dressed to go to an Astros game.
Yeah.
So
fuck them.
So, okay. So you're Tillman Fertitta, right? And so we'll leave your restaurants and your chemo boardwalk aside for a moment, your casinos. How much rope are you giving Stone?
If I'm Tillman Fertitta, I'd say the rope is up. Because I think when you look at what he has done with this team, there's been a lot of misses, right? At the end of the day, the Jalen Green pick, miss. You could have had Mobley. The pick of Christopher late in the first round, who you picked because he was Jalen Green's AAU teammate and they got along, miss. Because you know who went the very next pick and is a productive NBA player? That'd be Grimes, to the New York Knicks, who's had a very nice NBA career out of the University of Houston. And so I feel like his draft picks haven't been good. He's gotten Sengun. Yes, he got Sengun. I think Jabari Smith is probably going to be an okay pick, but looking back on it, would you rather had Chet Holmgren now? Knowing what you know? He looks to be maybe the better NBA player. And then you look at the free agent signings. You gave a lot of money to Fred VanVleet. You have locked this team into pretty much the salary cap for what it is. You gave a lot of money to Dylan Brooks. And early on in the year, that looked like we got a Shane Battier type player. But now it kind of looks to me like Dylan Brooks is turning into Ron Artest when everybody else got injured in that playoff run and Ron would just dribble for 23 seconds and shoot a fadeaway three. Dylan Brooks is getting his fucking shots up right now. And that's not what this team needs, right? There are a lot of scorers. Dylan Brooks is a great 3-and-D guy to play that Shane Battier, PJ Tucker role, give you a dog attitude, tough defense, and hit open threes. But I don't want him shooting 15, 20 shots a game. And, now all of a sudden you look at this roster and you wonder, we had a lot of draft capital from the Harden trade. We had cap space galore. And this is where we're at. I mean, I pitch it back to you, Scott. If I'm Fertitta, I say the rope is out. How can you argue that it shouldn't be?
Well, my issue here with what Stone has done is let's take Sengun out of the equation. Let's look at 3 key draft. Let's look at Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and let's also look at Amen Thompson. If you could throw their games together and you could tell me what's the key thing missing from their game, what would it be?
3-point shooting.
Shooting in general, right? So, and I liken it to Ben Simmons. Think about when the 76ers picked Ben Simmons. Oh, man, what a passer he is. Oh, what a defender he is. Oh, what a rebounder he is. He could do everything but shoot the basketball. And I think the assumption was when the 76ers picked him as, oh, well, he'll figure that out somewhere down the line. He hadn't figured it out yet. And he's pushing, what, 30?
Yeah, I
30,
don't
31 years old?
understand. I don't understand the misconception of why people think you're going to develop a jump shot. I really don't understand where that comes from, Scott. Because in my opinion, in my life of watching basketball, shooters can shoot, right? Like, you at least have to show a semblance of a jump shot. Yes, LeBron James became a better shooter, but he still had a jump shot. Russell Westbrook has never developed a jump shot. He didn't just fucking grow into it. He didn't lose it. He never had it. If you're not a guy who's ever had to shoot, and now all of a sudden you get to the NBA and you have to shoot it instead of just getting to the rack at will, there's no fucking room for you anymore.
Yeah, and I think what kills me about Stone is, not, if you want to take a chance on a Jalen Green and all that athleticism, okay, that's fantastic if you surround him with guys who know how to play basketball. But when you are taking the guy with the same profile, Amen Thompson, guy that can finish but can't shoot. Jabari Smith, I mean, he's young, and he's shown some range at times, but Cam Whitmore, inconsistent shooter. I mean, he can absolutely light it up though when he gets hot. So, kind of the question is when you get to Dylan Brooks, I absolutely think he's as good as Shane Battier, but you would never pay a Shane Battier the price that you're paying to Dylan Brooks. I mean, I think that's the whole point, is that, Fred VanVleet is a really good basketball player. He's not a great one. And you're paying him max money. And so all of a sudden you look up and this team is capped out. You've got a mid-level exception. You've got another top 10 pick coming. Now, part of it, the only pass I'll give to Stone is I would say that, 3 years in a row, this club had the worst record in basketball and did not wind up with a first overall pick in any of those drafts. That's extremely unlucky. And not only that, but seemed to get like a pick after your automatic hits in those drafts. And so, he got unlucky with the ping pong balls. Which,
but what he didn't get unlucky with is his player evaluations both on and off the court. Because there's one thing that you and I both failed to mention at this point, and that's that, is there a big, giant waste of cap for Kevin fucking Porter Jr., who is a bad human being, who is the reason that we didn't go with Mobley in the draft and we went with Green because he and Mobley didn't get along at USC. He's eating up cap space, and we had to cut him after you fucking extended him. After he threw fits and left the stadium in the middle of the game and had to be calmed down and showed you time and time again that this is not the person that you hand $19-ish million a year to, and instead, fuck it, give it to him.
Well, we didn't get nothing out of that deal. We got Steven Adams, essentially, in street clothes.
Again, another wasted opportunity. We bring in a guy who can't play this year. And we wasted the ammo that we had, right? Like, I used to think Daryl Morey was this amazing GM, right? Because he made a lot of moves. There was never a deadline that went by that Daryl Morey didn't make a move. And it seemed like Daryl Morey tried to win every single trade, where I feel like Rafael Stone loses every fucking trade. Like, I don't feel like we're in good hands. I never felt like we were in bad hands with Daryl Morey. I don't feel we're in good hands right now with Rafael Stone. I don't see the vision. I feel like with Daryl Morey, we had a vision. Well, even in the times between superstars, when we were trotting out Kyle Lowry and Kevin Martin and Goran Dragic, we were collecting assets so that if a superstar became available, we could pounce. And that's exactly what Morey did when he acquired James Harden, right? There's no vision like that with this team.
And the thing is it's not even so much losing trades, because I think if you were to take individual trades, like, is Victor Oladipo a guy who couldn't play for Steven Adams, a guy who can't play? Is that a loss? No, it's not a loss.
But it's not a win.
It's more of a tie. I mean, if you look at some of the deals that, were made, I guess, at the point that you traded Kevin Porter Jr., is that trade a loss? No, because, Kevin Porter Jr. is going to jail and you got assets. Okay, great. It's the point of how did you get to that point where you had to trade Kevin Porter Jr.? And then number two, what team are you assembling together? Because I feel like he's Jerry DePotoing his way through his general managership. I mean, Jerry DePoto in Seattle, and for the Mariners, for those of y'all who are not familiar, he's a guy that I don't know what he has a vision for his team. I just think he's looking at this, hey, if I trade this guy for this guy, I win the trade. Okay, well, that's not the only thing that you judge a general manager by. You have to judge them by what roster are you actually physically putting together. And if you take away, I think, Van Vliet and Sengun, who else on this basketball team is actually technically good at basketball?
I think Jabari Smith. I really like. I think he could be a quality starter. I don't think he's going to be a star.
Could be.
But he's playing good ball right now. He's playing good ball right now.
So
but
tonight,
that's it.
Tonight, as I'm speaking, Sengun, I think last time I looked, had 30 points against the Spurs. Jalen Green has 21. Van Vliet has 12, and that's all for your double digits. Dylan Brooks had a big fat 0. Jabari Smith, I think, had 2. Cam Whitmore had 5 points in 5 minutes, and you're still wondering, why the hell is he only playing 5 minutes? It's kind of the same story every night. And Udoka is his first year as the coach. He's dealing with it the best way that he can. Sure, he'll come under criticism at some point, but I think it's way too early to point the finger at him. So you got to look at who's assembling this roster. And not only the fact is, it's not that the fact that they're going to win only 30 or so games. That's not what bothers me. What bothers me is where can this roster go from here?
Right. I'm with you on that 1,000%. You have kind of backed the Rockets into a rudderless ship here. There's no superstar to build around, but yet you're basically maxed out cap-wise. And that's one of the worst places you can be. And then on top of it, you don't have a lot of tradable assets. I mean, that's one of the worst places to be in the NBA. You tried to go through what they call the process, which is losing a crap ton of games and collecting draft picks and trading away assets and hoarding assets. And then you used all those assets on a combination of Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, Christopher, Kevin Porter Jr., who are not net positives right now, right? These are not all NBA level players. And when you max yourself out cap-wise and you max yourself out asset-wise, you have to hope you have at least one all-NBA level player and then like a couple all-stars, right?
Well, and what you're hoping for is you're hoping for development. You're hoping for one. He's buying lottery tickets. He's buying all these athletes. Jalen Green is a tremendous athlete. I think if you were to do like a basically take the ball away and just do an athletic skills challenge, I'd put Jalen Green up against any person that's in the NBA. But you got to do something with a ball in your hands. And I was looking online, because there's I'm in some Rockets groups on Facebook, and somebody was talking about, hey, the Spurs are looking for a shooter. Here's a package that they would give you for Jalen Green. It's like, if they're looking for a shooter, why in the fuck would they trade for Jalen Green? When did he become a shooter? Look at his numbers. You tell me.
Right, and it's okay if you want to draft one guy like Jalen Green, if you want to take a lottery chance on that athlete. But then, to this day, they haven't surrounded him with shooters. They haven't put a litany of three-point shooters to where you can use his athleticism, get inside, kick it back outside, and hit open three-pointers. Instead, you go and draft Amen Thompson, who's a worse fucking shooter than Jalen Green, but oh, thank God, he's a little bit better than his brother. He's like a half a percentage point better three-point shooter than his awful three-point shooting brother. But at no point, as you said, in the beginning of this conversation, Stone hasn't drafted anybody who could shoot a fucking lick. And I think if pure athleticism was the game, the Rockets would be a great team. But as you said, you got to put the ball in the fucking hole at some point. And teams can pack the paint, and if you can't shoot, you are not going to win in today's NBA. There used to be that adage like a jump shooting team will never win the NBA Finals because they're going to go cold and you just can't stay hot the whole way through. Well, that's not the case anymore. Nowadays, if you're not a good jump shooting team, you will not win. You will not win in the NBA if you can't hit jump shots.
Well, and back to what you said earlier, and I think the point is that it's a mistaken belief that you can learn how to shoot. I think you can certainly improve. LeBron James is not a good shooter. He's made himself proficient, but like when you look at his three-point shooting, he's not good. I mean, he might be NBA average. He's just great.
He's had like one or two seasons at 40 or 41%, but that's about it.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like with baseball. Can you teach plate discipline?
Minimally, you can make someone better at it, but if they don't have it, if they're a free swinger, they're always going to be a free swinger, right?
Yeah. I mean, Jose Altuve, he's famous as a free swinger. He's taken more walks over the course of his career.
In the NFL, could you take a gunslinger and tell him to be conservative? No. Brett Favre's not going to take a check down when he sees a guy streaking down the field. He's going to fucking let it rip, and that's what's going to happen. You can't change who someone is. You can enhance what they do. You can get better at elements of what you do. But like you said, if you're an undisciplined hitter, you're not going to become disciplined. You can have a better eye, but you're still going to chase pitches. If you are a bad shooter, you can get better. You can be, as you said, proficient. You're not going to be Ray Allen. No matter how much time Eamon Thompson spends in the gym, he's not going to turn into Jesus Shuttlesworth. It's not going to happen.
Did you actually watch that movie?
I own that movie.
Oh, you own that? It was an underrated film, I think.
It's okay. I mean, honestly, I'm just not a huge Spike Lee fan, I think is what it is. Like, there's not a ton of Spike Lee movies that I love, but, you know, I love the beginning of that. The beginning of that movie, everyone's just like, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And they're like, Jesus Shuttlesworth. And out comes fucking Ray Allen. And you're just like, how did they get him? And how did you decide Ray Allen was the guy that you wanted for like the most amazing basketball player of all time?
Yeah, well, out of high school, yeah. So, I'm with you. I think the rope, you definitely, he needs to sell. If I'm Tillman Fertitta, he needs to do a sell job on what he plans to do this offseason. And he better make me believe.
I think at the end of the season, Tillman has to literally just ask him one question and get a good answer out of him. Rafael, what is your vision for this team? What is our path forward? From this moment here at the end of the season, how do we become a team that competes for an NBA championship? Because looking at this roster and looking at the assets we have and looking at the young players we have, I don't see it. I see a scenario where, you could be in NBA purgatory for a really long time. And that's not a good place to be. Because if you're not bad enough to get a number one overall pick and get the Wembanyama, look at the Spurs, are a perfect example. The Spurs suck very rarely. But when they do, they get David fucking Robinson, they get Tim Duncan, and they get Victor Wembanyama, or I don't know. Either way, big tall Victor, Vicky V.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the Western Conference. So that's the other point I was going to get to. The Spurs have 13 wins. So they are terrible, but then again, they're 1 year behind us in their schedule. I mean, they tanked one season for Indiana. So, I mean, there may be 1 or 2 years behind us, in their schedule of rebuilding. Memphis, who has just absolutely been decimated by injuries. And I'm trying to remember, there's one other team that's worse. Is it Portland?
Possibly, yeah.
And Portland, they blew it up. So, but
that's the thing. The Rockets can't even blow it up at this point. If you blow it up, let's say like you fire Rafael Stone and you bring in a new GM and he says, we got to start over. What are your
Well,
tradable
no,
assets at this point to go get anything else?
well, your hope is, I mean, to me, Rafael Stone, it sounds like his plan is for Jalen Green, Sengun, Thompson, and Smith to get better. That's his plan.
That's been the plan for 3 years.
Well,
You didn't play
and it's
Sengun. You didn't. You as a GM, you refused to play the fucking best
well,
player on the team for 2 years, so he couldn't get better.
well, he is getting better. Sengun's getting better.
Right, but imagine if he could have played
It's-
consistent minutes from day one instead of being told he doesn't play good enough defense, or he doesn't hustle, or he doesn't do this, or he
Well,
doesn't do that.
And so my question is that for the people who say be patient with Jalen Green, maybe Jalen Green, and if you're Rafael Stone, this is what you have to consider. Maybe Jalen Green is a star when he's 25 years old. He's now 21. If he's a star when when he's 25, you're unemployed. If you're Rafael Stone.
And let me ask you this, Scott. Name me one NBA player that has the progression 3 years into the league that Jalen Green has that became a star. Name me one player that couldn't cut the mustard for 3 years and then just became a star.
I think if you go back in time, I think if you looked at, Tracy McGrady really early on, if you looked at Kobe Bryant really early on, their first 2 or 3 years were pretty rough. But that's you're going back, and these are two guys who are coming out of high school,
Right.
and so and of course Green only plays 1 year out of high school, and then gets drafted. But the question is, if you got to look at Kobe Bryant and Tracy McGrady, and you got to sit there, and if you're drawing that map, they weren't good until year 5 or 6. So are you willing to wait that long? If you're Stone, you're unemployed if you're waiting till year 5 or 6 on Green.
And the odds are he's not a Rocket anymore at that point. If it's year
Maybe
5
he
or
is.
6 for Jalen, no. If it's year 5 or 6 that it takes him to come around, he's out of here. If he doesn't come around in 5 years, why would you renew his contract?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're renewing it for, right? But the whole point is that you, Stone, are not going to be in charge. Because if I'm Tomer Fertitta, and your plan is, hey, we're going to wait until he's maybe 6 years into the league, and maybe he's going to start playing great basketball then. Well, that's 3 years from now. I can't go another 3 years in the lottery. Just can't.
Yeah, it's. I think it's going to be a stark conversation and a difficult conversation in that owner's office at the end of the year. But speaking of not as difficult of conversations, but still one that's highly debated amongst the fans, is where will the Texans go on the running back free agency market? There's been a lot of conversation that Saquon Barkley wants to be in Houston. It would be his preferred destination. I think according to Aaron Wilson was who I saw it from on Twitter. But at the same time, I've seen reports that the Texans aren't necessarily sure they want to commit $12 million to one person at the position when, say, you could spend $6 million on Devin Singletary and $6 million on Tony Pollard, and there's 2 running backs for your $12 million. So the question I pose to you, Scott, knowing what we know about this team, with the cap situation they're in, knowing what we know about this offense and what it's capable of doing with a high-powered running back a la Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco, but also knowing what it can do with a stable of backs as we've seen in Miami as well. Where would you go with your free agency running back dollars?
I'm spreading the wealth. And really, it comes down to, what do you think about Dameon Pierce? Is Dameon Pierce capable of being a part of a rotation, or is he just completely lost? And during one of the postseason press conferences, it was the Cleveland game, because that was the game where you returned the kickoff for the touchdown. They actually interviewed him in the post game and asked him, like, what happened this year, and he's just like, I'm just gonna have to wait until the off season and then kind of figure it out. It sounded very defeatist. I mean, he's a positive guy. He's a good teammate, but saying he's a good teammate is kind of like saying a girl's got a good personality. I mean, it's just that you're kind of damning of faint praise at that point. If you are assuming that Damian Pierce is a net zero, you got to get two backs in here. Because if you get Saquon Barkley and Saquon Barkley misses time, as Saquon Barkley always does, who's handling the rock at that point? To me, if I could get Pollard for $6 million, or if I could get Pollard and Singletary for $12 million combined, sign me up right now. I mean, and then of course you got some other guys like Swift, another running back that that could fall into that, getting two backs for that amount of money. I mean, obviously there's more than one way to skin a cat. You could also draft a back, to provide for your second running back. But the thing is that unless you are really supremely confident in Damian Pierce, you have to have two backs in front of him. He cannot be your second back.
No, I completely agree with you. But I do want to say one thing. I think Saquon gets a lot of the injury-prone hype. He's played in the league since 2018. He played 16, 13, 2, 13, 16, and 14 games. He had 1 year where he missed a large chunk of games. Everything else, he's played more than 13 games every single year in his career. So, yes, there will be some fill-in time with a guy like Saquon. But there's also that home run hitting ability that not many other people have. Although the name you mentioned of Swift, that's a guy that I would love to see the Texans get their hands on. He's kind of a guy that has the skill set that Saquon does. Maybe not the same make a miss in a phone booth juke moves that Saquon was famous for, but he can catch, he can run between the tackles, he can run it outside, he can pass block. He's a pure 3-down back. So if you can get a guy like that and Devin Singletary and then have Pierce as your third back, I'd feel pretty good about it. I don't mind if the Texans go and spend and get a running back. I really don't. Because I think when you look at this team, the best years we ever had were when you had the best running back in the league in Arian Foster. And eventually we had to pay Arian Foster. He earned it. And he still performed even after we paid him. Was there some soft tissue stuff and the whole vegan and all that other bullshit? Yeah, but Arian Foster still showed up and balled when he was healthy. So I am not as worried about spending on a guy like Saquon, but I do love the idea of maybe throwing like $8 million at Swift and seeing if you can get Singletary back for like 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think so. And you raised a good point with Barkley. With the way that the games were distributed. I ended up with the article I shared with you. It's on the Battle Red blog right now for those of y'all that want to take a peek. I compared Saquon Barkley to Christian McCaffrey. And the one place where they were similar, and I only looked at McCaffrey's numbers in Carolina. Because if you're really, I mean, once he hit San Francisco, obviously San Francisco had a better plan for him than what Carolina did. Carolina sucked. Or still sucks. The Giants perennially suck. So that's apples to apples when you're comparing Barkley to McCaffrey. I think the one good thing that I would say about Barkley is maybe Bobby Slowick has a similar plan for him as what you're seeing out in San Francisco. But the question with McCaffrey was the same. Health. Now, maybe the plan that they're doing in San Francisco, maybe that's keeping him more healthy. Maybe it's the fact that they're not running him inside the tackles as much. Maybe that's keeping him more healthy. That's always a possibility too. I'm rooting for this to work. I'm just looking at the past. I'm not sure if it does.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the risk when you go spend money on the free agency market when it comes to running back, right? Everyone thinks of Le'Veon Bell and what happened there. And it's not unheard of for a running back to get paid and not be the same guy anymore.
I'm on green.
Yeah. But you know what? You have the same thing of Lamar Miller. That guy got his money, came over here, and had pretty productive time in Houston. I'd take Lamar Miller on this team right now because he'd be a perfect fit with this offense.
Well, and he would be used better than,
Bill
Mr.
O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien. I'm going to run everything in between the guards and kind of hope, here's my scat back that I'm going to run up the middle.
Right.
Oh shit, it didn't work. And there's a stat that's on footballreference.com called success rate. And I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not, no.
So basically, it's a graduating formula. So on first down, you should gain a certain number of yards. On second down, you have to gain like one more yard. Third down, one more yard. And it's just the percentage of plays where that happens. Barkley's is a lot lower than McCaffrey's. And when you look at the Houston offense, I think that encapsulates what happened last year with the running game. Is that, yes, Singletary had some chunk plays, but there was just way too many plays, especially when you had Pierce running, where you're running up the gut and you're gaining a yard or no gain. And that's not a successful play. So, to me, you're looking at the other free agent backs. I want to look at, Derrick Henry. Yes, he's near the end, but would he be a better back for this team for just a year as a guy that could run in between the tackles? Like, I think D'Amico Ryans kind of wants to, and a guy that I can guarantee you is going to gain 3 or 4 yards a pop just about every time he touches the football. I mean, that's an open question.
I mean, I'd love to have Derrick Henry on a reasonable rate and give him 12 to 15 carries a game, right? And then have that a guy like Swift or Singletary who's more of your scat back with it. Is that a role he's willing to accept at this point in his career? I don't know. But I think it would be interesting if $4 million got you 15 carries a game from Derrick Henry. I'd be interested in that.
Well, and one of the funny thing is that the way you look at 12 to 15 carries has to vary. And I think this is one of the things, like when you look at the way successful teams operate, is those guys buy in and they know that at some point I'm going to get mine. And so there might be a game where you run Derrick Henry between 20 and 25 times because you're grinding out. He's got the mojo going. That's the way the offense is moving. He carries the ball maybe 20 times, gains 125 yards, and you win on Sunday. Then maybe the next week, C.J. Stroud's balling, Tank Dell's, beating his guy downfield, Nico Collins is open over the middle, and Derrick Henry maybe has 8 carries for 30 yards. As long as you're winning ball games, that's okay. And I think what everybody has to understand is no matter who you sign, if it's Barkley or whoever, there's only one football to go around. Because that's where, we noticed Mike Evans signed back with Tampa Bay, but everybody's thinking, hey, we had Mike Evans. C.J. Stroud's going to throw for over 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. It's like, guys, that's not likely to happen. What's going to happen is that you bring somebody in that's fewer touches for some of these other players. But you want somebody in there who, on any particular Sunday, you could count on to carry your team over the top.
Absolutely. And I think, there's within reason, right? Like we can take Noah Brown's touches, we could take Robert Woods' touches, or at least, targets, and I'd happily give those to a guy like Mike Evans, right? But I don't want fewer targets going to a guy like Tank. I don't want fewer targets going to a guy like Nico. So, yeah, I was fine with Mike Evans not being a Texan. I don't think I ever really wanted that guy. I wouldn't have complained per se if he did come here, but I just didn't see that need. I see the running back position as a need for the Texans, and I want Swift now. I was on the Barkley train, but if there's a chance for the Texans to get a guy like Swift, I think he could be filthy. I really do.
Yeah, and I think they're going to build the San Francisco system. And so the guy that I think really fits at the wide receiver room, if you think about it, is I don't know if you've looked at Curtis Samuel's numbers.
Yeah, on our previous show, he was a recommendation of mine.
Yeah, and I don't know if we were talking about him as a receiver, but he's actually run the football quite a bit.
Kind of that Debo role.
Exactly, and the same last name just happens to help, right? So if you're building a team, You want a Christian McCaffrey clone, or at least a guy who could be a poor man's Christian McCaffrey. You wanted a George Kittle clone, or at least a poor man's Kittle, which I guess we're going to have to hope is Dalton Schultz, for the next 3 years. And you want a guy like a Deebo Samuel, could be a Curtis Samuel. So, I mean, to me, a diversified, I don't care how you get to your 100 to 150 yards rushing a game, as long as you get there. And so I don't care if it's 3 or 4 guys carrying the ball or one guy carrying the ball. But, that's where this team needs to get if they're going to be a diverse enough offense to win, particularly in January and early February.
Couldn't agree with you more, Scott. I think, again, I love the idea of Curtis Samuel coming over, and I think he'd be a great fit. I do. I think having a varied attack is so valued in this league, because if I can beat you 6 different ways, it makes it a lot harder to plan for me. Because if you saw me last week run the ball down Jacksonville's throat, and you're like, okay, Texans are running the ball well this year, let's get ready for it. And now all of a sudden Tank Dell's running wide open. Now all of a sudden Nico Collins is double move, beat his man. That's the kind of offense you want to have, and that's what's made San Francisco successful. You can't stop all those guys. You may find a way to shut Deebo down and take Kittle out of the game, but there's still going to be McCaffrey and Ayuk and Jennings. You may shut down McCaffrey. You may say they're not going to run the ball today. Okay, they got 3,000-yard receivers. What are you going to do about that? It's tough to deal with on a game-by-game planning level when you've got that level of weapons. And so when you got a guy like CJ Stroud that's on a rookie deal who's shown you in year one that, this is a guy you can build around, you start fucking buying bricks real fast.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Well, speaking of people who like to agree, let's talk about a guy who has a little trouble agreeing to a contract, and that's Scott Boras. Now, you, good Scott, will have a chance to talk about bad Scott Boras and how he cost Matt Chapman nearly $100 million.
So I don't know. Have you seen? That's one of those things you can never know. Have there actually been any reports on offers they turned down?
150 from Toronto was what I saw.
Oops. Well, and that's a great signing. And I was thinking, when I was looking at Matt Chapman, I was thinking, man, if I were Jerry Dipoto, I would run to ownership and say, we need this guy now.
It's a great deal first of all, it's a great deal for the Giants.
With the Giants.
Yes. Terrible for Matt Chapman.
That's a great, and the Giants have done really well this offseason. I mean, they've added Solaire. They've added Chapman. They added, the Korean center fielder. They maybe could use a little bit more pitching, but there's still guys out there, which we will get to here in about 20 seconds. So if you're looking at the Boras 3 that are left, and that is Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell, and JD Martinez. We'll start with Blake Snell. Not where does Blake Snell want to go, but where is the one spot that if Blake Snell went there, you think the entire pennant chase could change?
I'm going to be a homer. I don't want this move to happen, but if Blake Snell went to the Astros, it's fucking over, right?
Oh yeah, I see. You're talking with the expression that we like to use is gilding the lily. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression before.
I have not. No.
No, basically you're taking something that's beautiful and you're trying to make it more beautiful.
Gotcha.
The Astros are winning the West,
right?
Barring
if you have Blake Snell that rotation and then JD comes back, go ahead and make it 8 straight ALCS championships, right?
So the great there's a guy that used to be the president of Sabre, Vince Gennaro, who had a great book, and he was writing about basically economics in baseball. I'm trying to remember what the name of the title of the book is eluding me, but he had 2 points that he made that were brilliant. Number one, he talked about something called the platoon advantage, and that basically if you take a great left-handed hitter Great left-handed hitter is going to be great against right-handed pitchers, which is 80% of the league. Let's say he sucks against left-handers. He might make 25% of what a guy would that hits both sides well. So you go out and sign yourself a great left-handed hitter, you sign yourself the right-handed version, and you may pay half the price for in total, one good player. But the other thing that he mentioned was that there is a sweet spot where spending in free agency makes sense. And that is basically when your team is at about let's say anywhere between 80 and 90 wins projected. Because, everybody, spins in hyperbole. Oh, Yordan Alvarez is worth 10 wins. Bullshit. He's not worth 10 wins. Yordan Alvarez is worth like 5 or 6 wins. But if you're an 85 win team, suddenly 5 or 6 wins means you're a 90 win team. That's the difference between the playoffs and fishing in October. So who is that 85 win team that you added Blake Snell to?
It's the Rangers. I think the Rangers right now are, I think as built, are between 81 to 85 wins. I think offensively they're going to slug their way to a lot of wins, but they're missing a lot of arms that won them the World Series last year, right? They've got DeGrom still not back yet. They've got Scherzer still injured. Montgomery has not been signed. And all of a sudden you're looking at Andrew Heaney and Dunning as guys who are supposed to play major roles. You're replacing big back end of the bullpen pieces with guys who are shells of themselves, who were good closers in Robertson 6 years ago, but now you want him to come in and be the guy. Like, to me, the Rangers are that team that they should be looking around spring training right now going like, we're the defending World Series champions. Do we have enough in the tank to get back right now? And I don't feel like they do, but also they're claiming to be hurting from, the lost TV revenue. And so
they're my pick for third place in the AL West right now.
Unless they make a move, or if some rookie comes up and maybe it's what's his name, Son or Rocker comes up and does well, but other than that, I don't see it.
I don't think so. And then the two places I've heard with Snell is I've heard the Yankees and I've heard the Phillies.
I mean, he's turned down one Yankees offer already, right?
But the Yankees, that would make them pretty salty. Because, I think their hitting is going to be really good. Pitching after Garrett Cole and Marcus Stroman, does Rodon come back, and is he the Rodon of old? We'll see.
I mean, here's the thing, though. Snell walks a lot of batters. He is a guy who puts a lot of guys on base. And New York is a very hitter-friendly park with short poles in left and right field. Is that a situation with unruly fans in a hitter-friendly ballpark and a guy who puts more runners on base than you'd feel comfortable with? Is that a good matchup? Is that a good marriage? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, that and so the Phillies, they've just given a shit ton of money to Zach Wheeler. They re-signed Nola for a ton of money. They've got a ton of money sunken into Harper. You got a ton of money sunken into Trey Turner. Schwarber's maybe not quite as much, but he's still, he's not cheap.
Yeah.
He's not cheap. So, do they have the funds to go out and get, Blake Snell after, putting all that money on Zach Wheeler?
I mean, you're going to have to pay the tax, right? Like, I think they know if they do it, they're paying the tax. I don't think money's the object there. I think it's years. I think he still wants a 5 or 6 year deal.
He's not getting it. He's not getting it right now. And I think, hopefully Boras kind of realizes that. What I'm hoping, and then if I were them, maybe they go for Montgomery, go for the cheaper of the two, because they need more depth than they need top end of the rotation. I mean, I think Nola and Wheeler are good enough to be top end of the rotation guys. They need that third or fourth starter. That would be a good spot for him.
But I guess my question now, Scott, is why do players continue to want to work with Scott Boras? Because I think years ago, the idea was Boras clients got the most money, right? If you were a Boras guy, you were going to get paid. But I think nowadays, that's not the case. Like, unless you're somebody like Jose Altuve, who's just like, Scott, this is where I'm going to be, get that shit done, and don't drag it out. These guys are having to miss parts of camp constantly. It seems like every year, Boras clients are the last ones to sign. Look at what happened to Correa.
Yeah.
Twice.
So here's where. So I don't know if I told you this story, but one of the years I went to the Sabre meetings, and do you remember who the Hendricks brothers were?
Yeah.
So they represented Roger Clemens. They represented Andy Pettitte. And so this is the difference between the way that they operate and the way, or they operated, because I don't think they're still active as agents. But Andy Pettitte told them flat out, Houston or New York. He said, that's it. That's all I'm considering. Boston came in with a higher offer than either the Yankees or the Astros offered him. But he said, nope, Houston or New York. And where did he wind up? He wound up in Houston first, then he went back to New York. Boras, with the exception of Altuve, tells his clients, sit down, shut up, I'll deal with it. And so what they want, what's best for them, is not necessarily, what's in his consideration. He's looking for that 5% fee. I always love that, when people talk about, why is that guy signing with New York? They got a huge income tax. And my answer would be, Scott Boras can live anywhere he wants. He doesn't have to worry about the income tax on his fee for being an agent. So when Carlos Beltran signed with the Mets, was that the best place for him at the time? I would argue no.
I got that one at least, though, right? Like, the Mets at least have, like, a strong cultural Puerto Rican side, right? Like, there is reasons why that made sense. Some of the other ones don't make sense. Carlos Correa going to the Minnesota fucking Twins, that made zero sense.
No, and then him going back, and of course that, having a deal with, not only the Giants fall through, the Mets fall through. I mean, that was just a disastrous offseason for him.
And it just makes no sense to me why any big-time ball player would continue to work with Scott Boras, because I think we're at a day and age where it doesn't matter who your agent is. If you're a top guy, you're going to get paid, right? Like, you're going to get your money. We are in the age of 10, 12, 13-year contracts, $300 million value. We're there. That's not going away. You don't have to have Scott Boras to get you that A-Rod type deal anymore. They're just there for the taking if you're good enough. So what is the point of having a guy like Boras and now having a short spring training? Because you know what? If you sign Ian Snell right now, a guy who's a reigning Cy Young champion would typically be your opening day starter, Scott. Guess who's probably not going to be ready for opening day if you sign him right now? And that's Ian Snell.
Or Blake Snell.
I'm sorry, Blake Snell. Wrong Snell. But that's or Montgomery. Either of these guys aren't going to be ready to opening day.
Unless he's throwing, and we don't know, right?
But there's nothing like live game reps.
Yeah, and that's where my point is that if you're going to do that, then Major League Baseball needs to have a 31st spring training site where these guys go to. But then you have the other problem is what happens if I'm pitching for that 31st team and I blow out my elbow? That's that problem. Or I'm a Jose Altuve type. I get hit on the hand and break my hand. That's kind of the issue with that. And, with Jordan Montgomery, I think he's better than average. I think if you look at the bulk of his career, he's a mid-threes guy, which is better than average.
He's a solid middle of the rotation guy.
Yeah,
right?
It's not great, but the whole point is that he's only valuable if he's giving you 180 innings. There's no way he gives you 180 innings at this point. Because, there's no way he starts the season before April 15th.
Exactly. And now at this point, anything you get incentives-based, it's going to be tough to reach. And it seems silly to me that guys are still trusting someone like Scott Boras with their livelihood. Because then I'm not going to say everything that happened to Chris Bryant is on his agent, right? You still have to make the decision to sign the contract. But he got big money, and now he's not happy in Colorado because he felt like, it was into spring training. He had to sign somewhere. This offer's ready to go. Okay, I'll sign so I can go play. That comes into it too. So I don't think everybody should go with the, Andre Johnson, hire your uncle to be your agent route. But, the days of a guy having 10 or 12 clients, right? Like, where's Arliss? Give me a guy like Arliss Michaels to come in and just redo everything. Or, Ari, give me Ari fucking Gold,
Well, and that's the problem is that, you mentioned, the money that Matt Chapman turned down from Toronto. Chris Bryant turned down similar money from the Cubs. And look where it got him.
Right.
And that's where, and if you're Carlos Correa, I think if they had negotiated with the Astros, I think the Astros would have come off of that 6-180. I think there would have been some additions there. But if you're coming to the Astros and saying we're doing nothing for less than 10-300 or 10-330, they're not making up a $150 million gap. There's no way. But if you came back to them and said, hey, we want 8-240, you could have met in the middle.
Yeah.
You could have stayed in Houston, which is a place that you knew, a place that knew you, and probably would have played your best baseball.
Correct.
But no.
No. Yeah. It's gotten to the point where it's simply about, as you said, how much money can I make on my commission check? And the whole point of an agent is to get the player what they want and need. And part of what you want and need, you need to think about, where do I want to live? Where do I want to play? I am Carlos Correa. The odds are I'm going to make a minimum of $20 million a year no matter where I go play baseball. Where do I want to live? And I think it's time for players as well to start taking some of that into consideration. You don't need to have $35, $40 million a year and then go live in Kansas City and be on a 40 win team. You can make $30 million a year instead of 35, and you can be on a winning team and chase, there needs to be concessions made. And this is why the city of Houston loves Jose Altuve the way we do, right? Because that's exactly the decision he made was, I want to live in Houston. I want to be on this team. I know that in order to make it happen long term, I probably need to accept a little bit less than what my open market value rate would be. But that's okay, because I'm still very well played to play a child's fucking game. And I get to be in Houston where I love. This is home to me. My kids love being here. Make it happen. And that just doesn't happen enough in today's game.
He wants a third ring. He wants to break Manny Ramirez's playoff home run record. You're not going to do that in Oakland/Las Vegas.
No.
No matter how much money they pay you.
No.
They could pay him $50 million a year. Doesn't matter.
And you're not going to be appreciated. You're not going to, is breaking that, even if you did break that home run record, you hit 90% of them in an Astros uniform. Is it really going to feel as good to do it in a Twins jersey, Carlos Correa? When does it feel as good? Probably not. All your friends are back home. Your best friend is still playing second base for your former team, but you didn't have that conversation with your agent that said, find a way to make Houston work, please.
Well, and that's what's sad about his is I don't know if you saw, he had a really good series.
Oh, he played great.
Yeah, but who else is on that team? So there you go, right?
Well, one last thing I wanted to get to before our favorite part of the week, Scott. Jason Kelce announced his retirement yesterday, and what was a tearful, I think it had to be like 54-minute press conference. But Jason is just a guy who is multi-talented, has a great podcast, great NFL career. He went to the broadcasting training that they do. He's kind of become, social media famous. He's gone viral for taking a shot out of a bowling ball, for celebrating shirtless in Buffalo, for wearing a luchador mask at the post-Super Bowl celebration, and then telling like 5 different stories of where he got the luchador mask, as he honestly didn't remember until a kid came out and said, actually, Jason, you stole that mask from me. But I guess the question I have now, Scott, and we can look at this in jest and in seriousness, is what will Jason do now?
So I'm going to answer that question with another question. What is your personal opinion of Pat McAfee?
I think he is a douchebag.
I agree 1,000,000%.
I don't think we need political conversations at ESPN at 2:30 in the afternoon. That's just me.
So couldn't Jason Kelce do Pat McAfee's job better than Pat McAfee?
I mean, host a daytime football talk show, yes, but
Sure.
I don't think he will satisfy the people who are McAfee heads. I think I don't know if you listen to his show, him and his brother's show. It's a very different show. It's much more comical, but I do think there is a place for that, and it's one of the top podcasts in America. But I don't think the place for Jason Kelce is daytime TV. I really don't.
I think what I was thinking of, and I know that Travis is still playing, but I would love a Kelsey Brothers cast similar to Manning cast. I think that would be interesting. Obviously, we're going to have to wait at least another year, if not two, for as long as Kelsey's still playing. But that down the road to me sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, I think it would be fun. I don't know. I mean, with the way ESPN's set up and ESPN Plus, you could have as many different versions of the broadcast as you want, right? But I don't know. I don't know if I want to see. I saw a post on Reddit that was like, "What if he went to every NFL stadium and just tailgated his ass off before every game and just like hung out with the local fans and picked up the tailgate traditions and just we watched Jason Kelce get drunk off his ass and eat a ton of food every week."
He's a 2020s Tony Saragusa.
Essentially, I think, yeah. Or, just knowing what I know about him from listening to the podcast, I think opening a donut shop is definitely something that's within his wheelhouse. He's a big, big donut guy, has a very opinionated view on how donuts should be made. I'd like to see him buy like a minor league hockey team and then give himself like 5 to 10 minutes a night of ice time. Like put him on the third rotation, come in and out. Kind of like Roger Dornett, where you just decide like, it's official, I'm activating myself. And just come in and play a little bit, something like that. Like, I think he needs to, or fuck it. Like, start a professional women's field hockey league and make his wife the star player, because she was a legendary field hockey player and still coaches like high school field hockey. So I think maybe like start a league and be like, my wife's the star of the league, let's go. And kind of do it like the guy who wanted to create Highlight in America and just throw a ton of money at women's field hockey.
So I think the riskiest proposition, it would either be awesome or burn in flames. The heck with ESPN. Kelce on Nickelodeon.
But what about not football?
That could
like
go.
He just has
that
a
could
show,
go,
Kelce in the House. Like it's just
yeah,
like
that
Travis
could go.
Kelce.
Yeah, it could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing him, I mean, I could see people eating it up, or people with Nickelodeon being a children's audience, people going like, I don't know.
What about honorable mention? Backup dancer for Taylor Swift on her like skin tight leotard, and Jason just comes out with terrible moves, right? Like like you just give Jason a chance to come out and just rock it on stage, and everybody laughs. Or have him come out in that fucking like costume he wore when they won the Super Bowl, right? Like whatever the popper or whatever the thing that he wore. Have him come out in that and just do like a little shimmy or something. Like
Or
Taylor needs to get him on stage.
Pull a Yoko Ono or Linda McCartney. Did you ever, like, back in the day? So I saw McCartney back in '93. So that was back when Linda was still alive. And one of the radio stations isolated Linda McCartney's backup vocals, and it was awful. It was awful, and we know how bad Yoko was. So Jason Kelce.
But Jason has put out 2 albums actually. Jason and the Philadelphia Eagles offensive lineman put out a Christmas album for charity every year, and they've done it 2 years in a row. It actually sells pretty well. So if he had to do a little singing, I don't think he'd turn it down. But I don't want there is someone, I can't remember, there's an NFL player whose brother is one of Taylor Swift's dancers. And he's like very, like his eyes are very, like emotion, like he's very, I can't think of the word, like he's just, his eyes pop, right? Like whenever he's doing it, like he's very obvious on stage.
Effectual, maybe.
Yeah, it's not like inappropriate, but like this guy's feeling it, right? Like it's a good thing, but like he's just in it. I think that could be Jason. I really think he needs to go home and tell Kylie, like, honey, my goal is to be a dancer on Taylor Swift's tour. I've signed up at the Fred Astaire classes at Wednesday at 6 o'clock. I need you to watch the girls for me every Tuesday for 2 hours so I can be ready for the next part of the Eras tour.
I could jive with that.
I think it'd be hilarious. Just for like one night. Like, especially like if there's a stop in Philly, he has to do it. If they do a Philadelphia stop for the Taylor Swift Eras tour and Jason Kelce isn't a backup dancer for that tour, it's a huge missed opportunity.
Amen. Amen.
Well, speaking of missed opportunities or good things that Jason Kelce could do, let's talk some good things that happened this week, Scott. You had a pretty cool moment that I think a lot of dads look forward to, but are also very, very nervous about at the same time when it comes to taking those college visits and getting to go back to your alma mater. So why don't you tell us all about it?
Yeah, so this is going to be for those of y'all who are wondering, this is my joint hat tip / scumbag. So the hat tip goes to TCU, and TCU, I will say, even going back to my days, they spare no expense recruiting. They are absolutely relentless recruiting. I mean, when I was going through the process, they sent me probably more stuff than the other schools combined. And so what they did is they gave us an opportunity to do what is called a Monday at TCU. And so we got there at about 8:30, ate some breakfast, toured the campus, had some lunch, went to some sessions, toured a dorm room, spoke with, professors from the department. And it was, zero cost to us, with the exception of, getting up there and staying the night. Terrific experience. My daughter loved it. She's already visited TCU, so it's already on her list. So that part of it was great. And TCU, let me tell you, it is they have upped their game big time since I was a student there.
Now, do we want to stop it there and wait for the scumbag, Scott, or do you want to keep the Big Mo rolling?
I'll keep the Big Mo rolling.
Okay.
And let Tim go through his. So the price tag for this per year, for everybody, if you're standing and listening to this or watching this podcast, you might want to take a seat. $72,000 plus. Doesn't even include the parking, Tim. That's $72,000 plus. That's all encompassing tuition, books, fees, room and board, all that good stuff. So my first advice to you, Tim, is if y'all haven't started a college fund for Sawyer, you might want to get that ball rolling pretty damn quick.
State school, my friend.
Well, even with a state school, the state schools are running $40K now.
Oh my God.
So, and that's where my scumbag comes in. Is the university system? Because do you know how much it costs to educate Sawyer in her school district?
Like $12,000 a year or $13,000 a year, I think it is.
That's pretty high. For a lot of kids in the state of Texas, it's maybe around 10.
Okay.
So think about this. Why is it 7 times more expensive or 4 times more expensive as state school?
Because we're idiots and we allow it really went back to the Reagan era, right? Where they cut the amount of money that state schools were getting from the government. So then the state schools raised tuition. But at the same time, they pumped us going to college in a way that they've never pumped it before, that if you don't go to college, you won't be successful. Then so many people started going to college, so they raised tuition and raised tuition and raised tuition. Meanwhile, still getting more money from the state and the federal government now, and they just like to, make a crap ton of money off of us, Scott.
Yeah, and Rick Perry lifted the cap on tuition dollars, and predictably everything exploded at the local, the local college is the state college level. I mean, UT A&M absolutely just, blew the top off. And she's considering state schools. She's considering Sam Houston State, which is a really good school. She is not considering U of H, unfortunately.
Missed opportunity.
It is, but unfortunately, they don't have quite the programs that she's looking for right now. So, but the good news is that the college knows how expensive they are, and so they have made it an effort, to see if they can get as many dollars as they possibly can through need scholarships, through academic scholarships, through performance scholarships. But see, here's the flash for you folks. Where's that money coming from? It's coming from tax dollars for the most part. Sure, private businesses are chipping in some. But, when TCU is giving you a needs-based scholarship or they're giving you an academic scholarship, a lot of that's coming from public money. So we're killing you at both ends. We're going to sit there and we're going to charge you more money to go to school. But then, we want to help out majority of kids going to school. So here's another $10,000, $20,000 that can make the price go down. And knows, she's a pretty smart kid. She knows what the final score is. She knows that there's no possible way that she can go to TCU and have us foot 100% of the bill. That's just not going to happen. We've saved quite a bit of money, not that much. So she's going to hustle. She's going to get what she can. But and I can't blame TCU too much. They're positioning themselves in the marketplace, and I know where the money's going. I mean, they have built some absolutely tremendous facilities. They had a panini bar. They had like 3 or 4 coffee bars around, different around places around campus. They had a smoothie bar. You could actually use the little debit card that they give you for meals at restaurants around the campus. It's, and everything they tell you, hey, you go to all the sporting events for free for $72,000. So, hey, but they're trying, they're making an effort, but still the university system in general is just really, really fucked up at this point.
Like many of our systems in America, is broken. But I have a chance to tip my cap this week. My wife was on a girls' weekend with her mom and sister, so I had both the girls. And she asked me, what were some of your favorite childhood sports movies or just childhood movies? And I rattled off a bunch. And so she picked up some DVDs for Sawyer and I to watch. So this weekend, Sawyer and I watched Good Burger. We watched Little Big League. And we watched... there's a third one in there. It's going to drive me crazy. Either way, we watched, some of my favorite childhood movies, and, seeing her reaction to them and how much she enjoyed them was absolutely fantastic. Being able to rewatch some of these movies with her and share this with her and have her want to watch them over and over again. It just brings a lot of joy to my heart because that's how I was. A lot of people remember the movie Rookie of the Year and all that stuff. To me, Little Big League was the one that I loved. The kid inherits the Minnesota Twins. He fires the manager. He hires himself. That was my dream as a kid. I thought I was the guy who could manage the Astros if something happened to Larry Dierker. So seeing her enjoy that movie and, again, being able to share that with her was really, really special. And I'm glad her and I had the chance to watch those this weekend. As far as my scumbag... go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, I had wished that when they hired Larry Dierker, they would let him continue to color commentate.
That would have been fun.
I think we're gonna try and steal a basic. Why did they pick us off? I don't understand.
No, there's a delay. That's why there's a delay. You would have been fine. But for my scumbag this week, this is minor. It is. It's a minor scumbag issue. There's so much bullshit going on with election season and all that other stuff. I'm gonna go after a real minor petty issue. I read an article this week, and it was talking about how restrictive Taylor Swift is of her boyfriend, Travis Kelce. Of the list of things he's quote-unquote not allowed to do, being publicly shit-faced and going to a strip club were two like the main things that he can't do. I don't know about you, Scott. I got to think those are on my rules as well, as just a normal fucking husband, that not getting shithouse drunk and then going to a strip club is kind of just expected when you're in any fucking relationship, not just dating Taylor Swift. Like, the amount of need for clickbaity bullshit, or, you know, just the need to, let's say a little something negative against Taylor because people are over her. Like, it's out of control. It's absolutely out of control. I guarantee you, Taylor Swift never once said in her life, I'm banning Travis Kelce from strip clubs. I just would bet my ass that they're like, she probably doesn't let him go to the titty bar anymore. Let's put that out there. Like, come on. No normal relationship is it completely okay just to keep visiting the fucking titty bar on a regular basis. That's not okay. That's just life. Situations happen, maybe a bachelor party or something like that. But, like, I know for a fact, a bachelor party titty bar visit is the exact reason why one of my brother's fraternity brothers is no longer allowed to hang out with him anymore. Because his fucking soon-to-be wife found out about the titty bar visit. So, that being said, is she worse than Taylor Swift because she banned him from going to the strip club? Like, that's just being in a relationship.
Yeah, I've never been to the strip club.
It's awkward.
It's
awkward.
Yeah, I've been to a strip club before I got married.
Okay, no, yeah, all right.
But I never. But now it's at a bachelor party. It's not something.
I went on my 18th birthday. I was like, I can go see boobies. Let's go do it. And then I was like, this is weird. They just stayed naked after they got everyone's naked, and I'm just sitting there fully clothed.
They sat down and talked to us.
Yeah,
that was weird. Yeah,
I went to one in Vegas too, where the lady got mad that I didn't want a lap dance from her because I didn't find her that attractive, and she's like, find me sexy? And I'm like, nah, I'm sorry, I don't. Like, you're not my type. Like, can we please keep this moving?
Yeah. Well, it's like that South Park where it's like they got dance. Anybody? Did you ever see that one?
Is that when the grandpa goes?
No, it's Darth Chef.
Oh, okay.
But he had the one dance, and it's clearly a man. But no, the closest I ever got to shit faced. So, and this happens at the golf-a-thon frequently. So I'm saddened that you're not going to be able to make it this year. But so Dad decided that he was going to make screwdrivers, but he didn't tell me he was going to make screwdrivers. And so he made it, and he set it in the orange juice bottle. So I poured that orange juice all into my Yeti, and I'm like, you know what this needs?
First of all, orange juice in a Yeti is a terrible decision.
And I was like, you know what this needs? It needs vodka. And so I put more vodka in it, and I was not feeling any pain on the golf course that day.
I got a cousin who adds vodka to the Truly seltzers and stuff like that. I'm just like, good Lord, man. Oh, he does it with White Claw because his rules are there ain't no laws when you're living by the claws. And so my cousin Bo throws a little extra fucking Tito's in those White Claws and then goes out on the boat. So that's just lake life.
Yeah, that is true.
But I think that's going to be it for us here this week. It's been an absolute blast as always. A little bit more baseball-related talk probably next week as we get closer to opening day and having to make some of those cuts. There's been a few cuts here in camp, but nothing unexpected yet. So as the Astros get a few more results in and we see some of the more games and split squad and see some of these guys, we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more next week about Astros spring training.
Absolutely. We're going to get some more battles. Once you hit mid-March, things start to get interesting.
Scott, I know you've got some new material going up on Battle Red blog with a lot of pre-agency happenings. The tag deadline was today. Tell us a little bit about what you got going on up at the Battle Red blog.
So, I had my Barkley piece today. I am going to be running probably some profiles of some free agent wide receivers. Got an interview with Sean Bajani, who is a former guest on our last podcast and has his own show on 610 now. So look for that interview to come down on Friday.
Absolutely fantastic. We will be sure to put the link on the Facebook page for the Born on the Bayou Sports fans to be able to follow. If you're not following the Facebook page, where the heck are you? The weekly episodes get posted there, as well as our YouTube page, or you can like and subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast source, and we can get the podcast out to you that way. But who would want to just listen when you can see these beautiful faces? You know, I've gone through all this effort to up the production level. Come check us out on Facebook video. Come check us out on YouTube. We'd love to have you, and we appreciate everybody who has made us a part of their week. We will see you next time on Born on the Bayou Sports.